Good evening and welcome to Alaska Weather. I'm meteorologist Amanda Bowen. I'm so glad you could join us this evening. At the bottom of the screen, you'll find a phone number, 1-800-472-0391, that you can call 24 hours a day for a recorded forecast for your area. There's also a website, weather.gov/Alaska, that you can visit if you have internet access to find a more personalized forecast for your area, as well as lots of other weather and climate data. And as always, you can email us anytime if you have feedback or comments about our show at nws.ar.tvweather@noaa.gov. We have two warnings out for tonight into tomorrow. The first is a winter storm warning for the northeastern Brooks Range. Snow levels are going to be dropping today, and then snow is expected to start in earnest tonight and last through early Saturday morning. So above 2,000 feet, expect 6 to 10 inches of snow in the northeastern Brooks Range, and even below 2,000 feet, you can expect 2 to 4 inches of snow. So that's going to make travel difficult through the passes, and we expect wet snow on Dalton Highway between Toolik Lake and Adigan Pass. So if you're planning on driving through the Brooks Range, make sure that you are ready for winter driving conditions and some wet snow on Dalton Highway. Again, that's a winter storm warning. It's going to be in effect for the northeastern Brooks Range from this evening through 6 a.m. Saturday morning. We also have a freeze warning that's continuing for tonight into Friday morning for freezing temperatures for the Matanuska Valley as well as the Anchorage area. In the Matanuska Valley, we expect the coldest temperatures to be from Wasilla westward, with temperatures dropping into the mid-20s. And in the Anchorage area, the coldest temperatures will be in the Eagle River area, where we expect temperatures to drop down into the upper 20s. But for the whole area, for the Matanuska Valley as well as the Anchorage area, we do expect temperatures approaching freezing at least. Again, that's tonight into Friday morning. So if you have any sensitive plants, make sure to bring them in or protect them from the freezing temperatures tonight. Taking a look at our satellite imagery for today, we can see a swirl in the north of the western Aleutians. That's a weak low pressure system, but behind it we can see clouds starting to move into the frame from our next low pressure system that's going to be moving into the Bering. We can also see some clouds coming up into the northern Gulf with a trough that's coming in there, but lots of clear skies over the southern third of the state, especially from the Panhandle up through south central and into southwest. We do have some clouds over the northern tier of the state where we are expecting some precipitation today. So taking a look at our surface chart for today, we have high pressure centered over southwestern Alaska near the YK Delta area. That's what's bringing those clear skies and plenty of sun with dry weather from southwestern Alaska all the way through the North Gulf Coast and into the Panhandle today. North of that, we do have a trough that's starting to drop down into the Chukchi Sea. That's going to be helping to bring some rain and rain-snow mix to the northern tier of the state. We're also going to see those dropping snow levels through the Brooks Range. So snow in the Brooks Range starting today. As we head into tonight, we'll see that high pressure sticking around for the west coast, so continuing dry conditions for the southern third of the state. We will see some fog development along the west coast from the Yukon Delta north to Seward Peninsula, and even some fog along the Chukchi Sea coast, although there it looks like it's going to be mixed with some rain tonight. With those dropping snow levels in the Brooks Range, we'll see continuing snow above about 2,000 feet again in the Brooks Range, and that's when our winter storm warning starts. That's tonight for the northeastern Brooks Range. A bit of a rain-snow mix along portions of the north slope tonight. We do have some breezy conditions as well up there, with west winds 20 to 30 miles per hour along the north slope, gusting up to 40 miles an hour, with that trough that's coming down through the Chukchi Sea. So that's going to bring a couple of minor issues to the area. The first is elevated surf along the Arctic coast, so expect some higher than usual surf along the Arctic coast, as well as some possible minor beach erosion. It's a good idea, if you haven't already, to move anything that you have on the beach to an inland area to account for that higher surf. We also have the potential for some blowing snow in the areas that are going to see snow tonight into Friday along the north slope. With those winds combining with the snow, it'll be blowing around. Now, we think it's probably going to be warm enough that the visibility won't drop too far, but something to be aware of with the potential for blowing snow in the areas of the north slope that do see snow tonight into tomorrow, along with those stronger winds. Now, elsewhere in the state, we're still dry for the southern tier of the state, as well as the panhandle tonight, although it looks like some fog development possible tonight for the southern panhandle. We have a trough coming up just south of the Alaska Peninsula, bringing some rain, although it looks like the Alaska Peninsula itself is going to remain dry tonight. And then we have a deteriorating occluded front associated with that weak and at this point dissipated low pressure system just north of the Aleutians. We can start to see our next low pressure system approaching the western Aleutians with a stronger occluded front with it, so we'll see some more rain for the Aleutians associated with that. For Friday morning is when we have our freeze warning in effect for the Anchorage and Matanuska Valley areas. We've still got high pressure in command from the west coast, but really it's stretching all the way across the northern Gulf Coast. That's going to bring those clear skies and plenty of cooling for freezing temperatures, again, Anchorage and Matanuska Valley tonight. So high pressure, also clear skies for southwest portions of the state all the way through the panhandle, but we'll continue to see those breezy winds along the north slope and continue to see snow heavy at times for the northeastern Brooks Range. We start to see that low pressure in the Aleutians moving into the western Aleutians and strengthening down to 994 millibars on Friday, with that occluded front marching eastward through the Aleutians and bringing rain. We also have that trough sticking around just south of the Alaska Peninsula, maybe bringing some rain into the far eastern and southern portions of the peninsula for Friday. Heading into Saturday, we do start to see some changes. That high pressure on the west coast is moving north into the Chukchi Sea, so mostly dry conditions for the Chukchi Sea and much of the north slope with some fog. We'll continue to see snow in the Brooks Range, but it'll be tapering off by Saturday. And that precipitation for the northeastern north slope should be tapering off as well. Those winds should also start coming down as that trough has moved out of the area. We do have a trough developing over the northern Gulf from the Panhandle to south central, although it looks like those areas will remain dry again on Saturday. And we have our low pressure system moving north of the western Aleutians, strengthening, so bringing some breezy winds as well as rain further east in the Aleutians and just hitting the southern portions of the Alaska Peninsula for Saturday. Friday morning, low temperatures, again, freezing temperatures around the Anchorage and Matanuska Valley areas, warmer than freezing for much of the interior between the Brooks Range and the Alaska Range, cool in the Brooks Range, and then mid-30s along the north slope. We've got mid-40s though for the Panhandle for Friday morning. Friday afternoon, pretty mild across most of the state, cool. We've got 30s from the Brooks Range northward, temperatures around 50 degrees for much of the central interior, a bit warmer for the northern Alaska Peninsula, temperatures around 60 and 60s for the Panhandle. Saturday morning, this is going to be cooler for the Brooks Range with that trough having moved through, so 20s for the Brooks Range, around freezing for the north slope, and 40s for the west coast as well as the Panhandle. And then Saturday afternoon, warmest in the Panhandle once again with mid-60s, some mid-60s for the Alaska Peninsula, and around 50 for the central interior. Thanks so much for watching Alaska TV Weather.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Taking a look at aviation now. For Friday morning, we're expecting IFR conditions across much of the Bering Sea as well as the entirety of the Aleutians. IFR conditions also stretching from the northern side of Seward Peninsula northward through the Chukchi Sea and into the Beaufort Sea, with IFR conditions impacting the north slope to just east of Utqiagvik. Also IFR conditions across much of the Brooks Range, as well as coming up into the northeastern Gulf for Friday morning. Friday afternoon, we see some improvement for the south side of the Brooks Range to MVFR. MVFR conditions continuing across much of the Yukon River through the mainland, as well as through Norton Sound and much of the eastern Bering. IFR conditions continuing Friday afternoon for the Aleutians and the southern Bering Sea. For Saturday morning, we see IFR conditions redeveloping along the southwestern portion of the Brooks Range as well as out to the Chukchi Sea coast. Also IFR conditions continuing through the Aleutians, with MVFR again through much of the central interior, generally from the northern Alaska Range north and west to the Seward Peninsula. For Saturday afternoon, more improvement over the mainland to MVFR, so no IFR conditions left for the mainland, just offshore into the Chukchi Sea, but IFR conditions do continue for much of the southern Bering as well as the Aleutians on Saturday afternoon. Taking a look at pass conditions, AKwx Pass starting the day out on Friday, IFR improving Friday afternoon to MVFR, with the same thing at Adigan Pass, IFR improving to MVFR. Lake Clark and Merrill passes both starting Friday out at MVFR and improving to VFR Friday afternoon. Rainy Pass also MVFR improving to VFR, as well as Windy Pass and Isabel Pass. Mentasta Pass VFR all day on Friday, as well as Tanita Pass. Portage Pass also VFR all day on Friday, as well as Chilkoot and White Passes VFR on Friday. Freezing levels on Friday morning, we're looking at our cool air coming in from the north, so 2,000 foot freezing levels over the north slope, 4,000 feet over much of the rest of the mainland, although our 6,000 foot freezing levels stretching from about Nunivak Island eastward across south central and into the northern panhandle. Warmer air south of there with 8,000 feet over the Alaska Peninsula and 10,000 feet over the Aleutians, with as high as almost 12,000 feet across the southern panhandle on Friday morning. Icing on Friday, a big swath of isolated moderate icing stretching from the Chukchi Sea all the way down to the north side of the Wrangell St. Elias Mountains, so basically the northeastern half of the mainland. That's going to be above about 8,000 feet from the Brooks Range north and west, and above about 4,000 feet south and east of the Brooks Range. Jet stream winds on Friday, not very strong for Friday, so we're seeing one jet over the southwestern Bering Sea, 85 to 100 knots north of the Aleutians. Those winds are going to be out of the north and west. And then another jet over the panhandle from about 95 to 110 knots when you get over western Canada. That's going to be out of the west. At 9,000 feet, we're seeing a low pressure system just coming off the Kamchatka Peninsula of Russia. We've got strong winds south and east of that, 45 to 60 knots out of the west over the western Aleutians. We've also got a bit of a jet here, 35 to 50 knots across the north slope. That's going to be out of the northwest, and some increased winds over the panhandle, about 30 knots out of the northwest there as well. At 3,000 feet, we've got winds pretty much in the same places as at 9,000 feet, south and east of a low pressure system that at this level is centered just west of the western Aleutians. So those western Aleutians are going to see 40 to 60 knot winds at 3,000 feet out of the west. We've also got those increased winds across the north slope out of the northwest, 45 to 50 knots at 3,000 feet. Another secondary area of winds over the Yukon River, just on the south side of the Brooks Range, out of the west and northwest at about 35 knots. And turbulence below 4,000 feet, considerable moderate turbulence over a significant portion of the Brooks Range, stretching south to the Canadian border and the Yukon River. Also below 4,000 feet for the western Aleutians, that's considerable moderate turbulence.
Yo, 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 Star Children, your friendly neighborhood star nerd Trace here, and this week I'm going to help you find your seasonal wintertime constellations. And as a bonus, if you check throughout the week, the moon is going to fly through them. You'll have to hit the skies around 5 a.m. and face southeast. There, Orion the Hunter is easy to spot due to his 3 big, bright belt stars. By drawing a line through Orion's belt, you can go up to find Aldebaran, the brightest star in Taurus the Bull, or go down to the horizon and find Sirius the dog star in Canis Major. Catch the moon hanging around all this week, too. Constellations are seasonal because of the movement of the Earth around the Sun. In the summer months, Orion, Taurus, and Canis Major are too close to the Sun from our vantage point, so they're invisible to us night watchers. Put simply, we're on the other side of the Sun from them in space, which is so cool to think about. Keep looking up.
The Yukon Flats National Wildlife Refuge is a refuge in Alaska. It's the 3rd largest refuge in the National Wildlife Refuge System. North of Fairbanks, it's a vast ecosystem of wetlands. What drives this refuge are natural forces of fire, ice, and water.
The Yukon Flats has got a really interesting history. Back in the late 50s, early 1960s, there was a proposal to dam the Yukon River down by Rampart, which is downstream of the Yukon Flats. And it was a hydroelectric proposal. And so in order to assess the merits of that proposal, people got together because they were a little bit concerned about what the impacts might be on the Yukon Flats, the habitat, and all the people living within the Yukon Flats Refuge. There's quite a few people living within the refuge. We have 7 villages. So in order to figure out how special the Yukon Flats was, the Fish and Wildlife Service banded over 40,000 ducks within the Yukon Flats. And using the band return information, they found out that those ducks were using 45 of the 50 lower 48 states. They were using 7 foreign countries, and they were using most of the provinces over in Canada, as well as all the major flyways down in the lower 48. And so that identified that the Yukon Flats was a special breeding area, and that information, along with a lot of other public information that was gathered during that whole process, really ensured that the dam never did go in, and thus the habitat was preserved.
So what that did is it really highlighted the national importance of this area and how important conserving this particular area is for conserving many other natural areas in the lower 48 and even across the continent.
To protect the Yukon Flats Refuge because we have responsibility towards our future generations to leave land protected in the state that it is now. The Yukon Flats is a wild place. The ecosystem is intact and functioning, and you can't find that very many places in the rest of the U.S.
The Yukon Flats Refuge is among the most important places for ducks. So each spring, millions of ducks, and in addition to shorebirds and geese, raptors and loons, they all fly to the refuge to nest and rear their young. And the reason they are attracted to this area is because it has really enriched wetlands. There are lots of nutrients in the wetlands that provide a lot of food for the growing young.
We also have a lot of predator, prey species like bears and black bears, grizzly bears, wolves. We also have a lot of moose and fur bearers that use the refuge. So overall, there's just a great diversity of both upland, lowland, and migratory bird species that use the refuge.
Most people know the Flats as a duck nursery, and that was one of the main purposes that was designed for, but a lot of recent research over the last decade has really illustrated how important it is to a variety of native endemic fish species for subsistence and recreational and commercial fisheries throughout the entire Yukon River Basin and out to supporting commercial fisheries out to the Bering Sea as well. So it supports a variety of different whitefish and salmon species, the northern pike, a little bit of everything that people rely on as cultural identities, but also for subsistence resources and where people go to recreate and enjoy being outside.
The type of recreation that you're going to find on Yukon Flats Refuge is very primitive. And what that often does is it gives people a complete break from some of the stresses of today's world. There are no cell phone towers out there. There are no roads. There are no trails. So any type of recreation that people have is entirely natural. The lands and waters within the Yukon Flats National Wildlife Refuge are open to the public to enjoy. And that's a really important tenet upon which the United States is built.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Now for a look at your marine forecast. Starting with the sea ice edge, we're still seeing almost the entire Chukchi Sea as open ice-free water. There's still some of that multi-year high concentration ice in the northern Beaufort Sea, but the edge of the ice continues to melt just a little bit as we approach the ice minimum over the next couple of weeks. Over southeast Alaska for Friday, we are looking at winds 10 to 20 knots out of the northwest for the Gulf and 15 to 20 knots generally out of the north for the inside waterways. Seas relatively low, just 4 to 5 feet for the Gulf and 3 to 4 feet for the inside waterways. On Saturday, those winds are actually coming down a little bit more over the Gulf, 10 to 15 knots still out of the north, 3 to 4 foot seas. Winds coming up a little bit in the Lynn Canal area, 25 knots out of the north, also increasing seas there to about 5 feet. Over south central on Friday, we'll see winds 10 to 15 knots consistently out of the north. Small seas here as well on Friday, 3 to 4 feet across the board. Heading into Saturday, winds actually come down even a little bit more, just 10 knots out of the northwest to northeast, a little bit of variability across the area. Seas still very low, 2 to 3 feet for Saturday. For the Alaska Peninsula and Kodiak Island areas on Friday, winds 15 to 20 knots out of the west and northwest, seas 4 to 5 feet pretty much across the board. Looking ahead into Saturday, we can see larger seas approaching from the west, but not quite into the Alaska Peninsula area yet. So seas just 2 to 4 feet, winds 10 to 15 knots out of the northeast. For the Aleutian chain on Friday, we've got strong gales in the western Aleutians, 40 knots out of the south as we're on the eastern side of a stronger low pressure system and strengthening low pressure system. Winds decreasing as we head into the eastern Aleutians, 10 to 15 knots out of the north for the eastern Aleutians, but over the central Aleutians, 15 to 25 knots out of the south. Seas largest for the western Aleutians with those highest winds 10 to 12 feet. Heading into Saturday, as that low pressure system moves off to the north a little bit more, we'll see those winds in the western Aleutians come down a little bit and shift to out of the southwest at about 30 knots. Winds continuing to be southerly for the central and turning southerly for the eastern Aleutians. Winds coming up actually a little bit for the central Aleutians to about 30 knots out of the south. Seas coming up a bit as well, 8 to about 12 feet for the central Aleutians. Still small seas for the eastern Aleutians, 4 to 5 feet. Friday for the west coast area, we're looking at 10 to 15 knot winds, generally out of the east and southeast, although we do have some light westerly flow at 10 knots in Norton Sound. Heading into Saturday, we'll see more consistently east to southeasterly flow, picking up significantly in the area south of St. Matthew Island, 35 knots out of the southeast. Also down by the Pribilovs, about 25 knots out of the south. Seas over the open Bering increasing as well to about 8 to 14 feet. For the Arctic coast on Friday, we've got continuing westerly and northwesterly flow across the Arctic coast, strong at 25 to 30 knots, decreasing a little bit in the Chukchi Sea to 15 to 20 knots out of the west. And as we head into Saturday, we'll see those winds decrease significantly. So they've been up for a couple of days, but definitely coming down by Saturday, just 5 to 10 knots over the north slope and about 10 knots out of the west for the Chukchi Sea. For tonight, we have snow levels dropping in the Brooks Range. We've got that winter storm warning starting for the northeastern Brooks Range tonight and lasting all the way through Saturday morning, that is. For heavy snow, 6 to 10 inches above 3,000 feet elevation in the northeastern Brooks Range. So keep that in mind if you have any travel plans to travel Dalton Highway through the Brooks Range. We also have a freeze warning in effect for Friday morning for the Anchorage and Matanuska Valley areas. First freeze of the season for many locations in that area. So if you're in Anchorage or Matanuska Valley, make sure to bring in any of your sensitive plants. Elsewhere in the state, we're seeing those continued increased winds along the north slope as that trough moves through the area. Thanks for watching. We'll see you back here again tomorrow.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.